Good evening. Good evening. I'm Councillor Annabel Blackmore, the Chairman of the Planning, Infrastructure and Economic Development Policy Advisory Committee, and I'm very pleased to welcome you all to this meeting of the committee this evening. The meeting will be broadcast live and recorded for playback on the Council's YouTube channel. Will anyone else be recording the proceedings this evening? Thank you. I ask so that the people at the meeting will know that this is happening. If the fire alarm sounds during the meeting, please remain seated, and members of the Democratic Services team seated to my right will assess the situation and give further instructions on the evacuation of the building if necessary. So, members, if we could turn to the first page of the agenda and to item 1. Are there any apologies for absence? I think everyone is actually here this evening, so I don't think there are any. Item 2, there are no substitute members because everyone is here. Item 3 relates to urgent items. There is an urgent update to item 10, which is the Maidstone Borough Local Plan Review adoption for 21 to 23, and it relates to page 869 of the Cabinet Papers. It is a replacement page. This is not urgent. Whilst not an urgent item, the minutes of the previous meeting were also circulated separately, so everyone should have a hard copy in front of them, which was handed out earlier this evening. Yes, that's the replacement page, Councillor Commands. And then there are also some minutes as well, which you should have had. Okay, Councillor Commands.
Can I request we have a replacement to the replacement, because I can't read that. It's too small.
Unfortunately, that's the only copy we will be getting. I appreciate it is extremely small. It probably would have been better on either A2 or A1, but that is the copy that we have. Councillor Cleaser?
Yeah, just to concur with Councillor Commands, and actually we should be making our documents accessible. We're not meeting our disability requirements as a public authority if we send out documents that half the committee can't read. I accept that it's a replacement, but if we're being serious about making all our documentation accessible to all, we need to look at that in the future and ensure it doesn't happen again. Thank you.
I think it's a fair point, Councillor Cleater. And I think it's also worth bearing in mind, we can put a copy on the screen if you would like one displayed, because I think at least then we can enlarge it and move it around a bit so everybody can see it, if that would help. I don't know how members feel about that, but we can certainly access that. So if we move to agenda item 4, this is the notification of visiting members. Now I can see 3. I can see councillors Burton, Mumford and Perry. Would each of you like to step up to the microphone to advise which items are of interest to you?
Item 10, the local plan, Madam Chairman.
Is that the only one, not the forward plan? Okay, thank you. Is that the same for Councillor Mumford and Councillor Perry? Okay. And do you all wish to speak on that item? Thank you, Councillor Mumford. Okay. Okay, thank you, gentlemen. So if we move to agenda item 5, the disclosures by members and officers, are there any disclosures this evening? Thank you. Agenda item 6, disclosures of lobbying. Has anyone been lobbied? I will start with Councillor McKenna, please.
Item 10.
Councillor Trapinski.
Item 10.
And Councillor Spooner.
Item 10.
Councillor Gray?
Item 10.
Okay, shall I take it that everyone has been lobbied on item 10, unless you say otherwise? Is that right? Councillor Jones?
I think I also ought to disclose that I'm the former chair of the Against Lidsing Development Committee.
Okay, thank you. That will be duly noted on the record. So if we move to agenda item 7, to consider whether any items should be taken in private because of the possible disclosure of exempt information. Apologies, in my excitement to move on through the agenda, I've moved too quickly. Councillor Jones, your disclosure for agenda item 6 about lobbying and the fact you were the chairman of the Against Lidsing, appreciate you are no longer in that position. However, what we have to make sure is that you're not predetermined, because of course, if everybody approaches the room, doesn't listen to the information, they're predetermined, there is absolutely no point in their being here. So please would you confirm for the record that that is the case?
I'm not predetermined and I come here with a clear and open mind.
And presumably ready to listen to the information. Thank you. We do have to ask as a matter of course, and it cannot be taken for granted. Thank you. So if we move to agenda item 7, to consider whether any items should be taken in private because of the possible disclosure of exempt information, I am going to move from the chair that all items be taken in public. Should any members wish to discuss the content of the previous meeting's part 2 minute in detail, which is the one sheet of yellow paper we have in front of us, I will recommend that these be deferred until the next meeting to allow for increased notice of the exemption category. Is this agreed, members? Thank you. So if we turn, please, to agenda item 8. These were circulated a few minutes ago. Are there any comments to be made about pages 1 to 5 for the previous meeting? Any comments, members? No. In that case, I will move that the minutes, so that's pages 1 to 5 and the yellow sheet as well. I move that the minutes for parts 1 and 2 of the meeting held on the 6th of March 2024 be approved as the correct record and they will be signed. Is that agreed, members? Okay, thank you. So if we go to agenda item 9, this is for the forward plan. And this can be found in your agenda pack, pages 1 to 6. Are there any comments that any members would like to make? No comments? Okay, in that case, I move that the forward plan is noted. Is that agreed? Thank you, members. So now we're going to move to agenda item 10, which can be found on page 7 of the pack of papers. And I think before we start, I think we need to remember that we are here to decide whether the projected plan goes forward to Cabinet or it doesn't. We are not here to discuss every detail of the contents. It's a case of yes or no. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of things that a lot of people don't like, but it's not a question of do we like it or don't we like it. So I'm pleased that everyone is not predetermined, because that's how we come to this meeting. And I will be turning to Councillor Cooper to open. I know he will be taking questions afterwards. We've got Miss Britton, Mr. Edgerton and Mr. Gilbert in the room. And then on the screen, we have Miss Smith, Mr. Nielsen, Miss Cullen, and I can't read that, Miss Huang as well. So we have an abundance of officers here to ask questions. And with that, I will ask Councillor Cooper to open with his comments. However, I will say, if I feel that people are going off the subject, then I will bring you all back. And may I also say, please don't repeat what the previous person said, otherwise we could be here a long time. Now I didn't realise that. We have our legal officer with us in the room, but in addition, we also have legal representative online, which I think is Miss Thomas, is that right? So apologies, I didn't realise. Modern technology is thwarting us, but she will be joining us shortly. So I will hand over to Councillor Cooper, please. Thank you.
Madam Chairman, thank you very much. And I must say, I feel the sword of Damocles hanging over me somewhat this week. We're here and this culminates essentially on Wednesday evening. And we are here to decide not what the development framework for the borough will be over the next 15 years, but to decide whether we want development within a framework or not. If I can give some history on how we've arrived at the position we're in. Following the 2017 local plan, council gave a view to the strategic planning team to embark on a spatial strategy which included garden communities as opposed to a dispersal strategy. That spatial strategy was agreed on a cross-party basis through regular group leaders meetings, and it was agreed in this very room by a decision-making committee as opposed to a cabinet system, again cross-party. That has been ratified by full council, not before several public consultations, and there were consultations going on after that at Regulation 18, Regulation 19, and throughout the examination. Those consultations have been both broad, looking at spatial strategy, and technical, taking into account a huge amount of very important detail which does affect this borough and its planning policies as well as its development framework over the next 15 years. The report was found sound by the planning inspector, subject to main modifications. All of the main modifications are certainly welcomed by me, and I hope, therefore, by the council to improve the plan and the policies that we had made. If council on Wednesday does not agree this local plan, we will have a whole series of policies that have been worked up, which we feel are for the betterment of this borough, which will not be in place. Development will, of course, continue, but it will continue at a higher number. The annual increase of new residential dwellings in the plan is set over the plan period on the step trajectory is 1,157 units per annum. That number, by our most recent calculations, increases to 1,226. Policies for things such as biodiversity net gain in the NPPF are set at 10%. We have a policy which requires 20%. All of the main modifications which the inspector has put into the plan and which we believe makes our plan better and stronger would be lost. There would be no SPDs for the large strategic developments. I'm sure that some of these developments would continue regardless, Madam Chairman, but without the safeguards which are required to ensure that they have the least effect on surrounding communities. We would be reliant not on the infrastructure which is planned within our local plan, but we would rely on Section 106 and Community Infrastructure Levy, which in some regards is out of date, particularly when it comes to the viability of town centre developments. There are a number of other matters within the policy which I think are important, which I'm sure members will have given regard to tonight. What I'm seeking tonight is advice and feedback from members of this committee. And members of the committee are asked to considering the following recommendation to Cabinet. I will read this out. So 1, that Council be recommended to adopt the Maidstone Borough Local Plan Review 2021 to 2038 at Appendix D to the report of the Cabinet on 19th of March 2024, which incorporates the Inspector's main modifications and the policies map at Appendix E to the report of the Cabinet of 19th of March 2024. And 2, that the Council be recommended to give delegated authority to the Head of Spatial Planning and Economic Development to make any non-material typographical corrections and formatting changes as required. I do urge members to obviously discuss things robustly tonight. I'm sure that's what's on the cards, but I do ask that we keep in mind the importance of having policies in place. I would be quite happy to take any questions, and if I cannot answer the question, I think I have the full force of the strategic planning team on hand this evening who can answer any particular technical queries. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. It's always nice to have support, isn't it? Okay, the only person I've got on my list at the moment is Councillor McKenna. Oh, apologies. Councillors Perry, Mumford and Burton, did you wish to say anything at this point in time? Absolutely not. Not at all. Okay, thank you, gentlemen. To you, Councillor McKenna.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that's very well put, Councillor Cooper. And by yourself, I don't think we're here to debate in that context. So for me, it's very simple. I move the recommendations as per the papers. I'm happy with them and I move them.
Before you go any further, Councillor McKenna, Councillor Cooper did actually read out the amendments. So when you say per the papers.
With the amendments.
With the
yes.
amendments. Sorry, I just want to be absolutely clear.
No.
So we're not looking at the right one. Okay, I'm just going to hang on to that. Is that seconded? Okay, thank you, Councillor Spooner. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Councillor Jones, Councillor Grigg. Okay, so I think we'll just go to the other members if we can, because I think it's only fair that everybody has their opportunity to speak. Councillor Jones first, please.
Thank you. I haven't actually got very much to say tonight. Many councillors, and including myself, feel that these advisory committees are frankly a waste of time. We sit here week after week debating and voting on issues when the Cabinet already knows the course of action that it will take, which in this case is the adoption of the local plan. The 6 Tory Cabinet members who run this council don't listen to the wishes of the advisory committees, as was the case with the Oakham Wood vote. And the same will happen here tonight if everyone voted against the recommendation. The Cabinet will do what they want. Much of the electorate know that NBC is not democratic, and the voices of councillors and residents are ignored. The rush to get this Tory-led local plan adopted is a last-ditch attempt to get the plan through before the election period starts on Friday, and many who will be voting at Wednesday's meeting aren't even standing for re-election. If this local plan gets voted through on Wednesday, the mess of sorting it out, an undeliverable, uncosted, diabolically bad plan falls to the new administration, not to mention future legal challenges that will follow. I will keep my other comments for Wednesday, which I feel is the meeting that actually counts. It's not tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Grigg.
Okay. This is not a perfect plan. It was never going to be a perfect plan. It was impossible to please everyone with every item of it. Leading up to this, I have been very vocal about the things that I don't like in it. I do not accept this is a Tory plan. I have worked on it for years, right from the beginning, and I have done that as a Liberal Democrat and I have done that as an independent. I've sat and listened at council meetings month after month where every item that was not liked was brought forward by all members of the House. So I can say, sitting here as an independent, I do not accept that this is a Tory plan. There are parts in it that I don't like, that I have fought with my whole political career to change, but we have got to where we are. I also know that to not put this forward would be catastrophic for Maidstone, catastrophic to put us in the hands of development. So although I have reservations and although I'll keep on fighting, to me this is a no-brainer. It has to go forward. Otherwise, we're in severe trouble. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grigg. I think it's fair to say that a plan is better than no plan, and planning by appeal is not pretty at all. I think Councillor Spooner, you seconded Councillor McKenna. Did you wish to speak?
Yes, I do.
I'm sorry, I came to you in the wrong order, so please
That's all right.
accept my apologies.
I might lose my voice as I'm talking, but I'll do my best. I agree entirely with what Councillor Grigg has just said. We had working party meetings in 2018, 2019. We went through the whole process. Are we going to have a dispersed strategy? Are we going to have new settlements? We made democratic cross-party decisions to have new settlements. We then had cross-party support for the new settlements that we picked upon. That was all decided back in 2019, 2020, 2021. You know, it by no means can it be considered to be a Tory plan. It is a borough council plan. As Councillor Grigg said, no local plan will ever be perfect. There are always going to be winners and losers. That is inevitable. But we are required to provide land for housing. The government is insistent that we do that. It has been a government priority for the last 30 or 40 years. Successive governments, and once again, this is totally non-political. The Labour government, the coalition government, and the present government have all tried to drive up house building rates. And if local authorities do not provide enough housing in their local plans, the planning inspector will refuse to support them or consider them to be sound, and we will be in a situation of planning by appeal. It is absolutely vital that we adopt this local plan. As chairman of the planning committee and having been in the planning profession for over 50 years, I certainly appreciate the value of having an up-to-date local plan. If we do not adopt this, we are inviting the developers and the land speculators to do their worst. They will be queuing up to submit planning applications, and the first ones they will go for will be round Lenham, round Lidsey, because that's where all the work's already been done. They will put their applications in. They won't even wait for the 8 weeks determination. They will lodge an appeal as quickly as they can to get their place in the pecking order. Inspector will look at the evidence from the appellants, from the local authority. Oh, where's your local plan? Oh, we haven't got an up-to-date local plan. Where's your 5-year housing land supply? Oh, we haven't got that either. But you had a local plan found sound by an inspector. Why didn't you adopt it? Oh, because we didn't like it. That isn't going to carry any weight at all. That is absolutely ridiculous. The planning inspector will look, he will see, have you got your housing provision? If you haven't got it, it doesn't matter what grounds of refusal we might think of, protecting the countryside, protecting woodland, provision of housing trumps everything. We are creating a disaster for the 180,000 people who live in this borough. It is inevitable that a few thousand people will be badly affected by the local plan. I can understand that and I sympathise with them. But the Borough Council could not have done a better and more considered and more thorough local plan. It's been through 3 serious bouts of public consultation. We've had sustainability appraisals, habitats appraisals, economic assessments, and it has been crawled over by a highly qualified and experienced government planning inspector who says our plan is sound. If we do not adopt it, We are just inviting the developers to come in and do their worst, and we will be powerless to stop it. And on that basis, I'm more than happy to second the motion put forward by Councillor McKenna.
Thank you very much, Councillor Spooner. Shall I go to you, Councillor Cooper?
Why not? Thank you, Madam Chairman. I completely do sympathise with Councillor Jones's position, and I'm sure that Councillor Jones is in quite an invidious position right now. Regardless of what we name this plan, and for the record, I consider myself a Whig and not a Tory, but I don't think it is a Tory plan. It was, like I've already mentioned, the spatial strategy was agreed in this very room by a decision-making committee long before we had a cabinet system, long before I was a councillor. And I am delighted that these things were made on a cross-party basis and with a large amount of consensus. The matters at hand, though, are quite serious. This isn't about where we build now, it's about whether we have that. And I just really want to stress, would councillors who have spoken against this plan want to see large-scale development near them without the road improvements, without other infrastructure put in place? And that really is what is at stake if we move forward without a plan. I think it's also really important to say that regardless of people's particular views of any democratic deficit within this organisation, it will not be the cabinet tomorrow that decides whether we adopt this plan. The final and ultimate decision maker will be the body of councillors, to which my party does not have a majority. So if we do adopt this plan, that will have to be done on a cross-party basis. Madam Chairman, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. I think that's absolutely right. It will end up at full council. So, Councillor Cleater, you're next on my list.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Really just a couple of questions, actually, for me for clarification, because I am still wading my way through it, and my group, will be very honest, has not come up with a decision yet on how we're going to go. But one of the big issues that I saw was around, I'm not aware that we've got a memorandum of understanding with Medway around Lidsing, so I'd be very interested to see what they're saying, although I do know they're an authority without a local plan. And again, I'd like some clarification, as we've got legal people here, of what the consequences are if we don't have a local plan. So I'm asking those open questions because I want to know, and I will be discussing this tomorrow with my group, and we want clarity, because this is a devil in the deep blue sea, to be quite honest, choice. It's a bit of a Hobson's choice we've got, and it's about how we balance that. But I've read, I think I was up to page 100 and something today, and one of the issues is obviously Lidsing is right butted on to Medway, and certainly those of us, everyone on this committee will have received those emails, is about impact on the infrastructure. And there seemed to be, to me, from what I've read, and I will continue reading, an over-optimistic view on public transport and infrastructure. So if I could have some answers to those questions, I'd be quite grateful, if you're able to.
I think I am able to. However, if I can't give enough detail, Madam Chairman, to Councillor Cleater, then I really hope someone around me will. So I'm frantically scrolling through the inspector's report, but hopefully I can give you not just some answers, but some reassurance. So in terms of Medway, clearly Medway Council, and it is a matter of public record, have been opposed to our allocation at Lidsing. I completely understand that. However, the inspector has found that our duty to cooperate and has met the legal duty to cooperate in respect of the strategic matters that cross the administrative boundary with Medway. That is a quote directly from the plan. There is also a paragraph which at my fingertips I cannot find immediately, but I can assure you it does exist. That says that actually in terms of scoring how garden communities are, being close to an urban conurbation actually increases their viability. So The inspector has also gone on to say that he believes that there are solutions to the issues surrounding the outstanding matters with Medway, and he believes that we can demonstrate as a planning authority and the evidence that has been given to him from the development community that there are solutions to the matters at hand with regards to the ongoing issues and the infrastructure with Medway. Moving on, the consequences of not having a plan. So if we don't have a plan, we immediately go to the NPPF's definition of sustainable development, because without adopting the plan, our 5-year housing land supply will be completely blown out of the water. So pretty much any spiv or chancer could turn up with a planning application anytime in the future. And provided that it meets the absolute minimum requirement as per the NPPF, we would have very little chance of defending that at appeal. So there are two matters at hand. One is how much it would cost to defend appeals, which is taxpayers' money. And secondly, these developments are likely to go ahead. I think what is important is that some of a lot of the allocations within the plan are already quite worked up proposals. Costs a lot of time and money for the developer community to head into and get to the stage of submissions, even for cooler sites, but let alone once we get to Regulation 19. I can assure members here tonight that developers are not going to want to get absolutely no return on that investment. So landowners are likely to put in speculative planning applications regardless for these sites. If I turn specifically to the large scale sites, because I think those are the ones which will cause the most harm if they were to go ahead without planning policies, there's a comprehensive suite of supplementary planning documents, SPDs, which have weight and will form the basis of development in that area. A developer could quite legitimately come along without the council working with them for a SPD and put in an application which generally would mean that there will be a lower standard than we would have required for our policy map in the local plan review. The most obvious and immediate thing is the biodiversity net gain. There is a requirement in the local plan review, which the inspector has found sound, for 20% biodiversity net gain. The NPPF states 10%, so immediately we lose that protection. In terms of open space requirements that we've put in the local plan, that will completely be shot away as well. And very importantly, transport links. So whether it be access onto motorways, junction improvements nearby, we would revert to the Section 106 and community infrastructure levy regime, as opposed to having development master plans. So I think that it would be pretty catastrophic. Moving forwards, not just those strategic sites, we might get development in places that we really had decided wasn't appropriate for development. So we kind of get the double whammy. It comes into places where we'd agreed it was acceptable, albeit not ideal. And we also get it in the places which we deemed were far from ideal and unacceptable. Just moving on to the final point that Councillor Cleater made, which was about public transport. Again, there was these documents have been consulted on, our transport documents, and they have been found sound. I can, however, give assurances to Councillor Cleater that I say we, but the strategic planning team and the council are aware that we do need to do some further work on our integrated transport strategy, which is something that will be, our hands have been somewhat tied doing this work during the examinations, both because of staff resource, looking at the local plan review, and also the fact that our local plan review was based on this document. But we will be looking to refresh that document to ensure that we get, we have to be realistic, and we have to be realistic about where we can make improvements. I hope, Madam Chairman, that has answered Councillor Cleater's questions.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. I think what I might do, if it helps Councillor Cleater, I'm going to ask Miss Britton or Mr. Edgerton if there are points they'd like to add. I'm sure Councillor Cooper's remembered much of it, but they'll always have details that a little bit of fine tuning maybe. Miss Britton.
Thank
you first and then Mr. Edgerton, I assume.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I think in terms of adoption or non-adoption, one of the main things to consider is obviously, as Councillor Cooper's mentioned, is the scenario of development and what happens if you don't have a plan in place.
May I ask you just to pull the microphone just a little bit closer to you? Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah, one of the key things is the scenario of not having a plan that's up to date in place and the implications for development across the borough. So obviously our current local plan was prepared some years ago. That is gradually going out of date in terms of its policies, and therefore it makes it more difficult to then fend off planning applications that are coming through. So by adopting a local plan at this stage, we are keeping our policies up to date in terms of developers coming forward and applying for permission. If we don't have a local plan in place, we can't fend off those sporadic or ad hoc applications coming through. And as been mentioned already, they can be coming through in the case of Lidsing or Heathlands, or in fact any other village or community out there across the whole borough. So they could come anywhere, and we haven't got those planned for. If we don't have a plan in place, also in terms of our housing numbers, I think it's important to point out that the evidence that the local plan review is based on goes out of date within 2 years of submission of the plan for examination. That date is the 30th of March of this year. So our evidence is only valid until the 30th of March 24, in which case after that time we have more trouble again because our evidence is out of date for our policies. So we would need to then go back and do further evidence. We can't just wait and have a decision later in the day. We need to make that decision, yes or no, now. If we don't adopt the plan, we've been doing some calculations, and the best case scenario that we think we'll be at, as at the 1st of April 2023, was having a 4-year worth supply of housing. You know, we need a 5-year supply. That would drop the 1st of April down to 3.7 years. So we won't have a 5-year supply of housing if we don't adopt. So it's straight into that scenario of planning applications coming forward, and we wouldn't have very many reasons why we could refuse those planning applications. So it's quite a significant risk to the authority as a whole. Other issues, obviously, has been mentioned that within the local plan, we're asking for 20% biodiversity net gain. Nationally, it's 10%. So we're going above and beyond for wildlife and nature conservation. We've also got policies in the new plan which cover climate change, which we don't have in the current plan. And also infrastructure provision. If we've got a plan in place as part of that plan making process, we've got an infrastructure delivery plan that runs alongside it, that is being tested for viability, that has involved all the infrastructure providers and stakeholders. So we have planned for what infrastructure will go with this development. If you leave it to have no plan in place, then you cannot control the infrastructure coming forward. So the development will take place and you won't have that level of infrastructure coming forward with the developments. So they're quite significant issues. I think those are just some of the key issues, and I'll hand over to Mark, who's going to talk about Medway and also any other issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, so Councillor Tees has raised a couple of issues around Medway, the duty to cooperate, and also transport matters as well. And I think I can provide some fairly simple responses in that regard. The duty to cooperate is not a duty to agree And what the inspector has done within his final report is made a clear distinction between those two matters, cooperation and agreement. He has found that everything we have done to pursue matters with Medway, to work with them and engage with them, has actually been meeting the legal requirements. In other words, we have met our duty. The responses we've had from Medway haven't necessarily been positive. In fact, with regard to Lidsing specifically, they've been negative. But that is entirely legitimate. That is an entirely important part of the process of the duty to cooperate. It is not a duty to agree. So within paragraphs 18 and 19 specifically, or particularly within the inspector's final report, there's reference to how the duty to cooperate has been dealt with Medway. And the inspectors does state that, having read everything, including the unsigned statement of common ground, that at officer level there has been appropriate engagement and professional efforts to consider the impacts on Medway through the plan making activities, and that the mechanisms exist to enable ongoing joint working. But the inspector also makes it absolutely clear that Medway has clearly articulated its objections and its concerns with regard to the Lidsing Garden community in particular and those impacts. But having said that, in terms of the overall duty to cooperate and notwithstanding those concerns, the inspector has found that we have met our statutory requirements. So in that regard, there is a clear distinction, a difference between a duty to cooperate, which is what we are legally tested against, and we have been found that we have complied with, and a duty to agree, which is where Medway and Maidstone Borough Councils differ. The transport side of things is something which has been considered quite significantly and robustly during the examination process by the inspector. We put forward our proposals at submission in March 2022, as Britton has mentioned, and the examination has taken place for nearly 2 years following that time. The inspector has been concerned about the provision of transport around the Lidsing Garden community, and as a result of that has made very clear main modifications that we are required to place into the plan, and indeed have therefore been placed into the plan and the relevant policies. In particular, policy 4B, LPRSP 4B, which deals with Lidsing proposed garden community. The references here are to criterion 6B and 6G of that policy, but I think it's fair for me to actually say that first of all, there is a requirement that has been inserted into that policy requiring an orbital bus route, which deals with Lidsing and its connections to the Medway towns. That is stated now. We cannot change that as the local planning authority. That is a requirement from a main modification. The other thing that the inspector has inserted into that policy is the reflection of the importance of the supplementary planning documents that are associated with the local plan review and have regard to not only Lidsing but also Heathlands and Invicta Park Barracks. These supplementary planning documents are very important for ensuring continued engagement with communities, and also that we get the right level of detail and further evidence to help master plan these developments. In respect of Lidsing, there is a requirement placed by the inspector into the policy for the local plan review to ensure that additional transport work is undertaken as part of those supplementary planning documents. If the plan was not in place, those SPDs would not be there, and that additional work would not be a policy requirement. So the policy is extremely important in helping ensure that transport matters can be dealt with satisfactorily through the plan making process, including the supplementary planning document itself. So I hope that's provided some clarity there, Madam Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, all three of you. Councillor Cleater, did that help?
Well, I've been scribbling away, so I'll let you know on Wednesday, because I think that's when the main debate will take place. And also just thank you for the clarity of that feedback from all three. But yeah, it was helpful.
Because I think it is fair to say it's a good opportunity to ask as many questions as possible, bearing in mind you've got all the experts here. So I think if there's any other questions that people have got, please feel free to ask. I don't know whether there's anyone else. Here.
I'll come back on what you've just said about the orbital bus route. Bearing in mind our buses are privatised, how are we going to achieve that? I mean, if we were running the services, we'd just, put one in. But it's, so that's the sort of questions that we're being asked, which people will do because they want to know the nitty gritty, how it affects them. And it is important, as someone who drove up Boxley and past all the banners and through the potholed roads to get to a meeting at the weekend, that some bits of that report by the planning inspector, you could say were maybe through rose tinted glasses, and I'll leave it at that. And I'm not predetermining anything. I'm just looking at the reality of things that I've observed. But as I say, we haven't made a decision in our group yet, and we'll be doing that tomorrow.
Well, I think it's fair to say the inspector's taken an awful lot of time looking at an awful lot of information, and hence the reason he came back with a letter with more questions, etc., and then the main modifications. So we have certainly been through a long period of consultation as well, several consultations going back, I don't know how many years. Is there anyone else who would like to ask any further questions? I know Councillor McKenna, do you have any other comments you'd like to make? Councillor McKenna, you have proposed the recommendations on the additional sheet.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I'm going to be the last one before the vote, then I will. I was going to try and keep some of these comments out of this evening. I think predetermined is quite a good word to use. I think we should listen to some of the people that are speaking this evening. Cross-party work, someone that's been in planning for 50 years. This is the Maidstone Borough local plan. This is not the Lidsing Borough plan. Lidsing will happen regardless, but do you want it to happen with a local plan or without it? And I can promise you very, very strongly, some of the things that some of the people are saying to their voters and whatnot, and the party in power and so forth, you are lying to your constituents. We need this local plan. These developments will happen regardless of a local plan. It's how you want them to happen. But this is not just for Lidsing. This is for every person in Maidstone. So be very, very clear on that. These developments will happen. Let's make sure they happen for the right of Maidstone as best we can do. And this is the best we can do. And with that, I'd now like to go to the vote as per my proposal.
Well, before we do, Councillor McKenna, is there anything you'd like to add, Councillor Spooner, to the comments you've already made?
I would just like to back up the fact that this local plan has been 7 years in the making. It couldn't have been done in a more detailed way. We've counselled everybody's views. We've taken into account comments from everybody. It's the most comprehensive plan I think I've ever seen. But there inevitably are going to be people who think there are winners and people who think there are losers. That is inevitable. And we have done a comprehensive local plan. I think it is excellent. And I think that we should go for it. And I think we should adopt it as soon as we can, because it gives us control over what happens. That is the important thing. If we lose control, if we defer this, we then open up a developer's charter, because they can come forward with their plan applications. They won't bother to wait for determination. They will whack in an appeal after 8 weeks. And then it'll be first come, first served. Plan applications will be granted permission by the inspectorate, whether we like it or not. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Spooner. Is there anybody else who'd like to make a comment at this point in time? I'm actually going to break with protocol and see if any of our visiting members wish to make a comment at this point. No, are you all happy, gentlemen? Okay. We're trying to be as inclusive as possible. So then I will go to Councillor Commands.
Yeah, I haven't really got a lot to say. The only one thing I will say is the 6 years that I've been a councillor, that local plan comes in handy. Without that local plan, you, like you said, Dennis, it's free for all. They'll be building everywhere. We won't have nowhere to go. They'll be building on here. So yeah, the local plan is really, really important.
It's interesting, actually, Councillor Commands, because without the certainty, I think it means life is very difficult at the planning committee, because you haven't got any tools to say we don't want this, and these are the reasons why. So I think you could see it as a reasons why document, but a very lengthy one. So with that, if there are no further comments, does anybody wish to make another comment or ask further questions? This is your opportunity. Councillor Spooner.
Just very quickly, if we do not adopt this local plan, the developers will be rubbing their hands with joy. They will be putting in applications left, right and centre. They will say, right, you haven't got an up-to-date local plan, you haven't got a 5-year housing land supply. Can our application please go in the queue first? And that will be every single greenfield site anywhere in the borough. And we are a local authority who are acting for the benefit of 180,000 people in this borough. And those are the people we are thinking of. We need to take a comprehensive view of everything. We cannot pander to the agreements or to the wishes of just a minority, because that is what we appear to be asked to do. So on that basis, I'm happy to vote in favour of Councillor McKenna's recommendation.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Spooner. So we have 2 recommendations, members. These were read out to us by Councillor Cooper at the start of the meeting, and they refer back to, as we say, the plan. This is going to be recommended to Cabinet, which will take place, I believe, tomorrow, and then thereafter it will move to full council. So Cabinet do not have the final decision, but they will merely make the recommendation from there to full council. So members, I don't think there's any need to reiterate the recommendations 1 and 2. I won't take them separately. I will take them together unless there's any reason not to. All those in favour of the recommendations as proposed by Councillor McKenna and seconded by Councillor Spooner. Okay, and all those against? Thank you. And all those abstaining? Thank you very much. I take it that everyone has voted. Okay, we have not quite finished. I would like to thank you all for attending, and also to all those online who've waited patiently, and I will now formally close the meeting. Thank you very much.